Hey guys, it's Nick with the 9 Mile Creek Watershed District. In this video I'm going to show you how easy it can be to take a weedy, overgrown, invasive plot like this one at our office in Eden Prairie and transform it into a beautiful, vibrant, and biodiverse native planting. The first step for our particular site was to get rid of this big dead lilac tree. Now you probably won't have to do a tree removal on your property, but if you do, it's a good idea to get this done before you start working on your garden. Now that that's taken care of, you can see just how much of a mess this plot was. It was overrun with invasives like bittercress and buckthorn, but there was actually a decent patch of some good native plants that we saved and incorporated into the final plan. As for the invasives, we used a combination of weed whipping and localized herbicide. For smaller spaces, I probably would have preferred just hand pulling the weeds, but herbicide is much more effective for large spaces. Here's what the plot looked like after letting the herbicide sit for a few days. With it now a clean slate, it was time to head back to the office and begin to work on the planting plan. There were several resources that made this process a lot easier. The first one being this Hennepin County Natural Resources map. Just type in your address and you can use its measuring tool to determine the dimensions of your plot. Just click and drag around the area you wish to plant in. This tool is particularly helpful on larger projects. That being said, a good old tape measure works just as well. Now that we have the dimensions of the plot down, it's time to start designing. There are a few different ways you could go about doing this. You could use a digital design software like the one I'm using, or you could just use colored pencils and a piece of paper. It's really up to you. Just make sure you get the rough shape of your plot down, then add your plants as circles with diameters that correspond to the average spread of that specific species. As for exactly what plants to put in your plan, there are a ton of different factors to consider. It can honestly get a little overwhelming, and that's why having a resource like the Blue Thumb Plant Finder is super helpful. This website has information on many of the most accessible native plants in Minnesota, as well as a search tool with tons of filters to help narrow down your options. Factors like height, spread, color, and bloom time are all important to consider. For my specific plan, I wanted to go for a more natural and free-flowing flower-heavy look. I also tried to get a variety of flower colors, shapes, and bloom times so that the garden looks full and vibrant for as long as possible. Most of this stuff just comes down to your aesthetic preference, so don't be afraid to experiment a little bit. Once I was satisfied with my plan, I contacted several local plant nurseries to get quotes. We have a handy brochure that lists a bunch of these nurseries as well as their contact info that you're free to use. After selecting the best quote and having the plants dropped off at our property, it was finally time to begin the planting process. We removed the dead weeds left over by the herbicide treatment and tilled the soil. Then all there was left to do was to get plants into the ground. Reference your planting plan to make sure plants are properly spaced. Things might seem sparse at first, but the plot will fill in as time passes. Make sure you water frequently until plants fully establish. We have grants available to help fund native planting projects like this one. Go to 9milecreek.org/grants to learn more.